everyone. Welcome to Documentation Not Included, a tech industry podcast presented by DNI Stream, the live knowledge repository for software professionals. I'm getting better at saying that. It's Thursday at 7 p.m. British time. We are live on twitch.tv/DNI Stream. I'm Josie Howarth. I am absolutely burning up. I don't know where the temperature has gone so high, but as always, I am joined by the man who has epic posters, amazing t-shirts, and a beard that just won't quit. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Josie, and hello to everybody in chat. Thank you very much for watching and listening. There's already a few people having a chat in chat, so thank you for that. Your comments are always welcome. It is a live show, so please do get involved if you have anything to say, you've got any questions for our guest, or just comments in general. Always welcome, always welcome. So before we get going, let me introduce our guest, Parul Singh. You have an opportunity now to introduce yourself, tell everybody what you do and why you're here.
Hello, everyone. I am a first-time live streamer, so thank you so much to Josie and Chris for pulling me this far out of my comfort zone. But I'm really, really honoured to be on this podcast. So thank you for inviting me on. And so I am a software development recruitment consultant at Manhattan Partners. I'm also a mental health ambassador for the company. It's an area that I am incredibly passionate about. So I'm really excited to come on and talk to you a little bit, about my experience. I work in recruitment. It's very KPI driven. It's a really tough job to do. It's good money if you do it well, but if it was that easy, then I guess not everybody will do it. So I think a lot of people, it does lead to burnout. So hopefully it's something that a few people can actually relate to, as well as it does apply to other industries. So thanks for having me on. Oh, as you probably guessed by the accent as well, I am from lovely Liverpool, so up the Reds. It's where I am at the moment. So that might ruffle a few feathers.
Don't know what that means. No idea. I don't follow football.
The funny thing is, Chris and I, when it comes to football, we're just like, that's a thing that involves some kind of inflatable object, right? That's like sort of oblong, or is that rugby?
Yeah,
that's rugby. Yeah, we have no clue.
Isn't there a bat involved or something? You hit
a bat? Is it a flat bat or is it a round bat? But yeah, that's Chris and I.
I think it's about 15.
But before we go too far into our topic, we are going to do an icebreaker. This is our chance to ask something exceptionally random that has nothing to do with coding, development, or even our topic. And the entire purpose of this is to have a bit of fun. So I have a little thought experiment for both of you. This question has many answers, none of them right, none of them wrong. Is cereal soup? Yes
guest's honor
or no? Is cereal soup? And I want to hear from you guys in chat as well. Do you think cereal is soup?
And there's no weird Americanism going on here, because Josie's very guilty of bringing out weird American words that mean different, like biscuit.
No, biscuit is a chocolate-covered digestive, as far as
you call
I'm
them cookies in America, and then there's scones, which you call biscuits, which are just wrong. But anyway, going off track.
Scones with gravy, that's wrong. That's wrong on so many levels.
The scones are not biscuits from America, but that's a different topic. Soup or not? Soup or not? Cereal, soup or not?
Go on, Parul. Quick answer.
I think no, only because it's sweet, and also the components are always kept separate.
That's not a good enough reason, because it's sweet.
When do you ever assemble a normal soup? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, we make our own soup at home. We assemble it, but no, a soup. You can't say that soup has to be hot, because gazpacho soup is cold. You can't say that soup. I mean, soup generally to me is savoury, and a cereal is more often than not, it's sweet.
Yeah.
Most cereals, not all, but most cereals are. So maybe shredded wheat without any sugar on it is a soup.
Yeah, okay.
With croutons.
Interesting.
Put something in it and you're good to go.
Well, see, for me, the only reason why I say it can't be soup is because the idea of a grilled cheese sandwich with cereal sounds weird to me. And, a grilled cheese sandwich with vegetable soup, tomato soup, or something else it makes sense.
And
but there are fruit.
Volstrat in chat has just said soup, assembly required.
Some assembly required.
Like that.
And use of codes, cereal doesn't come in a can, so it can't be soup. It can come in a can. It depends on where you live. But yes,
Oh,
that's our
no.
icebreaker for today. We're now more learned than we were before.
What about you then, Josey? You didn't answer that. What do you think?
I said cereal is cereal. It cannot
Okay.
be soup because you can't have a grilled cheese sandwich in cereal.
There's nothing saying you can't. There's no rules saying you can't.
Oh, no, you can, but for me, it just doesn't sound appetizing at all.
No.
And
Okay.
I'm the kind of person who likes to have my peanut butter and chocolate and mix up things like, you know, a milkshake, a chocolate milkshake with really salty fries.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I get that.
Mackey's vanilla milkshake with, I guess you don't really call it Mackey's in America, though, do you?
Yeah,
I
Mackie
don't
D's.
even know what a Mac. I hear about Mackey's and everyone says I should go to a Mackey's, but I don't even know what
McDonald's.
it is.
Mackie D's.
McDonald's.
Oh, it's McDonald's.
Mackie D's.
I've been here since
No,
2003, and I have never heard McDonald's referred to as Mackey's. Actually, I take that back. I heard it from one other person, and it was in Final Fantasy, the MMO. Someone in one of my crafting circles mentioned. I had no idea what they were talking about, but there we go. Anyway, back on topic,
So, yes,
Chris.
onto the more serious topic of high pressure burnout high pressure burnout. So we've all experienced burnout at some point in our lives. Most of us have. I've experienced it in a few different areas. You know, when I was doing my game dev, I experienced burnout, but that wasn't particularly high pressure. It's just that I was doing too much work. But fewer people experience it in high pressure situations. I mean, I've worked in some high pressure jobs, but I don't think I've ever burned out from it. So let's start with a question, which is, what do we mean by burnout? So Parul, I'll let you go away with it.
I think there's two parts to burnout, and I think people often experience it in different ways. And what I would describe as my burnout is constant amounts of stress and exhaustion to the point where you know when you've taken it too far. You're like, I am at a breaking point now. You feel it on a physical level and you feel it on a mental level. Your brain stops working. You like physically, I just couldn't move out of bed. I just felt like completely broken. I was just crying all the time. And I'm like, I'm not generally like a sensitive person. So like I knew something was wrong. I'm usually quite, and in the recruitment job, you've got to learn to be like quite a tough cookie. So I knew that I'd actually got to that point. So that's probably the long and short. And I think it varies for everybody, but that will be the main things. You get very snappy, you know, you can't concentrate and either thinking too much or not enough.
I think it manifests differently for everybody, really. I think, you know, I mean, I think the snappiness is probably a repercussion of the burnout, is the stress. I think it's the anxiety and the stress that it causes that's the key thing, and people get there in different ways as well.
Yeah, I know for me, when I went through a burnout, I stopped sleeping because I couldn't focus. I couldn't stop this. Now, my brain in general is one that never stops anyway. So adding in additional multi-threaded processes that are literally stopping the buffer in my brain and filling it and making it impossible to actually come to a decision or a consensus or something like that. That's when I know I've reached that point. But for me, I stopped sleeping. I started obsessing about the tiniest things involving the work that was involved in that. And it's when I ended up being unable to make choices or definitive decisions. And every time I'm like, you know, I just need to do this, my brain went, yeah, but. Now, I know as someone who runs my own company, risk assessment is a natural part of everything we do, whether we're taking on a new client or we're working on a particular project, or we're making a business decision about a product that we're suggesting or doing whatever we're doing. So risk assessment is something I'm really used to. So when I reach that point where decisions, what decisions? There are no decisions. I can't make a decision because if I make a decision, then it is, for lack of a better term, manic without being manic or following along the manic depressive cycle or something like that. It was just this constant barrage, and sleep just didn't exist for me. And then I got really, really, really tired. And then everything starts falling behind because you can't make decisions. So because you can't make decisions, projects become longer and procrastinatory. I don't think that's a word, but I'm making one up and we're going to go with it. Procrastinatory.
I think, again, I've had it manifest like stress and burnout from situations, from work situations at least. I've had it manifest physically as well. I've had rashes.
Oh.
You know, I've had my eyes have gone all red
Yes.
and blotchy and rashy, and I've never had that. I don't have skin problems or anything like that, but it happened, and it was soon as I left that job, which was, it had very unrealistic expectations, and I knew that at the time, but I was too inexperienced to really recognize it, if you know what I mean. As soon as I left the job, you know, after a little bit of healing and rest, those kind of issues went away. I've had the same, you know, myself, just from not necessarily being overworked or being in a high pressure situation, but not really knowing what's coming up. Parul will be aware of this, and certainly you will be, Josey, from our previous discussions. The IR35 thing. I don't want to go into the detail, but that has, especially because I've spent so much time on LinkedIn reading posts and spending a lot of time around it, the uncertainty surrounding that. A few months ago, I was losing. I couldn't sleep at all, and I have never ever experienced lack of sleep in my life before. And that's stress, though. But we're talking about burnout that causes the stress. And I don't think, maybe social media burned me out there. I don't know. Maybe that's what it was.
I think there's different,
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that there's different sorts of like levels to it, isn't there? So I think the burnout is the point where you're like, something is dramatically wrong here. And this is what I wanted to talk about, is that how can you identify that before you get to that point? Because for me, it led to me going to the doctors, finally being diagnosed with depression that I'd probably actually had for a while before. And I lost a lot of weight. I lost a lot of weight, which I've managed to put back on. Thank you, lockdown and many bakery items. But that's really bad. You know, I couldn't eat. And I love food.
I think something that should definitely be addressed is when it comes to doing any kind of work in today's environment, especially in work where the stuff that we do is almost 24/7. You know, I watch servers, and if something happens to a server at 3 a.m., I'm up dealing with it, regardless of whether I have a meeting at 7 a.m. the next day. Like there is something to be had for the 24/7 environments we live in. But we also have this sort of weird, unrealistic threshold of what's expected by us by people who don't understand what it takes to do our jobs, whether we're in development or in the IT world. Unfortunately, or fortunately, you know, the people who run companies, or I'm talking like the bigger companies where you have your CFOs and your CTOs and your CEOs and things like that, and your different department heads, et cetera. A lot of them don't understand what it takes to do the jobs at the lower levels. So the people who are on, say, the network teams or the security teams or the development teams or the testing teams or things like that. And then they will set expectations for output of some kind. And even, I think, unfortunately, in schools, you're kind of taught this as well. You're supposed to embrace these almost unrealistic goals that you have to have reviewed with your manager every year to make certain you're following the actual rules that have been set by the company. Now, I'm talking about the people who actually work in the environments. Now, you and I, Chris, if I have to sit down and have a one-on-one with my boss, I'm having a sit down with myself or my husband, who's the director
The
of my
last time
company
someone
as well.
tried to sit me down and have a one-on-one with me in that situation, they got a mouthful, put it that way. Because at the end of the day, I'm independent, and I have been for a long time. But anyway, I'm getting off topic again with that.
My point is, though, there is this sort of almost belief that we have to be constantly moving, that we have to be constantly going after the next goal,
And chasing
that we
a
have
career.
to exactly, that we have to be doing that and meeting these really unrealistic things. And when people don't get a chance to stop and breathe, I think it starts to build up. And I know so many people, unfortunately, who don't see the warning signs. Unfortunately, I'm very aware of an individual who self-medicates through drinking, and they don't realize that that's happening. A lot of companies don't seem to have a good understanding of mental health, although hats off to St. John's Ambulance and things like that, and people who are going for their mental health first aid, which is actually a thing now. Mad props. My husband's going after that. I love him for it. But the need to have an awareness of people not just accomplishing whatever goals are set by the project or the company, but the people themselves need to be seen as individuals and guided and protected. So I think it's important to at least acknowledge that we live in some cases an incredibly fast driving, no stop, pedal to the metal companies.
I just accidentally played something I didn't mean to play, but I was going to play it anyway, so let's jump in with this. Yusef Codes has just said, not getting a chance to breathe, it's something that he thinks a lot of people can relate to, himself included. Absolutely. A lot of the time, the expectation on you is or even the expectations you set yourself.
Yeah.
Because we can do that as well. Josey and I, who work for ourselves, can overload ourselves with work. I have to very carefully manage my input so I can give the best output to my clients and manage those clients in a sensible manner,
Yeah, I think it's so true. I think that comes down to, it's actually such a small thing that I wanted to talk about, which has changed drastically for me since I moved jobs. That's holiday and sick days. So at my previous place of work, so again, still recruitment, I was working, I got in the office 7:45. I'd leave earliest at 6 within almost an hour of travel each way. Really long days, and it would tend to be longer. I got, excluding the days that they made you take days over Christmas and bank holidays, 17 days of the year that I could choose to take off.
They made you take off as mandatory.
Yeah, so it was 20 plus bank holidays, but 3 of those you had to take over Christmas.
Wow.
So that was really hard. And even like the sick days were only kind of like 5-6 days in the year. I have a chronic condition which I have to go to a hospital for every 3 months, and I ended up having to take that as like unpaid leave. So I was missing out on a day's pay for that.
SSP is another thing that can be a pain because it's this guillotine that is held over people, but whole nother topic. Sorry.
But then like it doesn't have to be that way. And I think people who work in like high pressure environments like recruitment, I think, not saying that's nothing to like my previous company, but because a lot of companies are like that, but the one I work for now, Manhattan Partners, I've got unlimited holiday days. I no longer have to count down every time and figuring out what I've got left for the year and like, oh, okay, if I take 4 days off a holiday here, and then none of that. I take it off when I need it, and I don't have to worry about sick days. Is that I'm too depressed to move today, but I don't know what to say. That doesn't happen anymore.
We have, there's a company I'm aware of that is for the people who are in IT and things like that. One of the companies offers something that's known as pillow days. And pillow days, you get a certain amount of them because they don't want you to exploit them, mind you. But pillow day literally is you've woken up, you look at your pillow and you decide, nah, mate, not today.
That's more interesting than work today, that pillow.
Yeah, exactly. At which point in time, you can just text and say, I'm taking a pillow day.
Yeah.
No questions asked. And you're not meant to say, I'm taking the day because, I didn't sleep. My neighbor did a thing. It's a mental health thing. Like, you don't need to say anything. It's just,
I suppose that sets a precedent, doesn't it, with your employees or your team members to so they don't feel pressured to have to tell you and give you excuses or even make excuses up. I'm not saying that people do that all the time, but some people sometimes do.
Do you know how much easier it is to say to your boss, hey, man, I had a really dodgy curry compared to, yo, man, I'm having suicidal tendencies.
Yeah.
It is.
You can't
so
say
much
that.
Easier
if you're in that situation, you can't say that out loud.
No.
You cannot say that. And that's the thing about anxiety, about, if you, I don't know, I've never experienced that, but I know people close to me who have, and it's difficult for them to even admit it to themselves, let alone admit it to other people and say it out loud. It's not just that, though. It's not just, suicidal tendency. It's anything.
Anything.
To do with in the whole mental health landscape. It's difficult for people to approach. All these posts that you see that go out on Facebook, and I was doing a press-up challenge on Facebook because I'm a show-off, and it was about anxiety and mental health and depression awareness. The very bottom of the post that you had to that you copied and pasted was, and I didn't realise this until about day 6 or something, was reach out. And it's like, that they can't do that. That's the problem. They can't reach out, or they can, some people can, but it's difficult to do that, and you need to reach out to them.
I think that this is one of the hardest parts of anything to deal with mental health. If you are a carer for someone who has mental health of any variety, or you are yourself working with someone who has things like that, the most difficult thing is, well, how do you make it so that someone who is going through something feels they can reach out? And honestly, there is no easy answer, because everybody I know who goes through the different spectrums of anything from schizophrenia to BPD to like depression, like it is way too varied. We can't just turn around and say, here's how you do things. But one of the biggest things that I've seen happen in this country that has changed over the years since I've been here is an acceptance of the fact that mental health is something that should be discussed and not criticized or derided or literally looked down upon. And it's weird because I've had to watch that happen. Whereas where I came from, before I moved over, even back in the early 2000s, in the United States, mental health was, everybody knew about mental health. And, granted, it was joked about and made fun of in a lot of ways. And, my weekly therapy appointment, blah, blah,
there's
blah.
a therapy culture, though, isn't there, in America? There has been for a long time.
There is, for better or for worse, there has been one. But it's a lot easier in the United States to turn around and say, yo, man, I'm depressed, compared to when I first moved here. And the different mental health teams that they have in this environment or in this country have changed over the years. So it's not as much as a stigma. So for people who are, who may have people or employees working underneath them who fall under some form of mental health, it's, how are you supposed to make it so that there is a comfort level? And honestly,
it's hard. Yeah,
it's really hard.
Copperbeardy in chat has just said he's he talks about this on his stream. He does dev streams himself. He's had anxiety and depression for 22 years, down to the most darkest points of it, and he always tries to tell people it's nothing to be ashamed of.
I completely agree.
It is nothing to be ashamed of.
It's nothing. It's not a weakness. It's so hard to talk about it, and it's not just. I think we've gotten a lot better about talking about like anxiety and depression, but there's other things out there that I still think actually have a bit more of a stigma. I can sort of tell, if I'm like in like social situations and I start talking about my history with like eating disorders, and you can see people kind of like tense up a bit. They feel like a bit awkward. So they don't know what to, like, I'm fine now, but you can tell they don't know what to say when you start talking about things less well known, like you said about borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, and some of the other ones as well. Like it's still that kind of, you don't know how to navigate. People don't know how to navigate that conversation because it's not being had as often. I think
part of it is also there is a difficulty in finding the right way to say something. We don't want to upset someone. I'm not going to turn around to someone and be like, tell me your mental story. Like, I don't need that. But if someone brings it up, I feel like I can have a discussion with them, because sometimes it's difficult to have that discussion. I want to be honest with them. So I might say, I'm glad that you're doing well. This is not something I'm capable of discussing right now for my own reasons. Perhaps we could discuss something else. Or I might go, well, how would you like me to approach this? Do you want me to just, pat you on the back, make certain that I'm really proud of you for doing this? Because I am. Or are you more interested in me, making certain that you don't fall into the pitfalls that cause a triggering event or something? Like, talk to me so I know the best way that I can work with you. And not everybody to do that.
Sometimes it's about listening. Just listening.
That's
and you don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
Well, you should at least show that you are listening in some way.
I don't mean that.
That's kind of important.
That's going to help, isn't
it? It's Copper has said something, and it's actually struck a chord with me, and specifically
and a few people in chat, to be fair.
Yeah, and specifically something you have said as well, my dear. We've when I first came over to this country, the reason why I know so much about it is I had a mental breakdown when I came over, and I actually had first responders. I'm not for certain if you're aware of what a first responder is.
Mm.
But I went to the doctors because I was speaking with my husband, like, I've reached it. I don't know anymore. And we went to the doctors and I said, look, something's really wrong. I am not doing well. I am hyper suicidal. Let's talk, because I'm used to that culture from America. So I come in and I sit down with them. I come home 20 minutes later. There is a knock on my door from the mental health team. They are sitting there with me, talking to me about what options are available, what groups they have available, places that I could go if I need to feel safe. They had pamphlets and everything else that they could possibly do 20 minutes after I got home, because I was listed as critical. That was a very first responder thing. Now, everything after that was a load of BS. But that first responder thing was really nice. So don't hesitate to talk to someone in particular, like your GP. In America, there's different. You can pick up a phone and you can dial a number, and 9 times out of 10, there's someone you can talk to or just shoot the stuff with. But, don't let your own self get in the way and think that you can't say something.
So I'm not saying we're going off topic, but we are kind of veering a little away from it.
I want to encourage people to stand up for their mental health.
All of this is definitely worth talking about. I don't want to say that, but let's move on a little bit to the next point we want to talk about, which is what level of stress in a high pressure situation or in any kind of job, any kind of working environment is normal.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting point, because I have actually I've just finished this week my course of CBT sessions. So for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's cognitive behavioral therapy. So I was referred to completing that those sessions by my GP, and it has helped me a great deal. I've got a whole notepad of things that I've written, which I'm sure I'll probably reiterate some of the points. One of the things that came from that was understand what's normal. Don't always associate sort of everything with like mental health. It makes me feel worse. If I'm like not having a great sleep, I was talking about having like really bad like vivid dreams and stuff, and it was like, it's fine, like it's okay. And like that, like some small doses of stress are actually they're good. Like Josey, you said that you thrive in stressful situations. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the best book I have probably ever read. And it's this one, The Stress Solution, by this dude. He's on TV sometimes, but he's a GP, and fantastic book. It's changed my mindset so much. So he talks about what the good effects of short-term stress is. Like, you'll raise blood pressure in the short term, transports more blood to your brain so you can think quicker. It's a fight or flight response, right? What's the long-term harmful effect of that? Chronic high blood pressure, isn't it? So, risk of many diseases, heart disease and stroke. And like that, there's quite a few different examples. So having small doses of those is like normal, but if you let it build up, then it's gonna lead to that burnout, which is essentially what happened to me. So I had so much stress piling up on my plate. And that takes me to sort of like, in recruitment, it's pretty, for anyone who doesn't know, it tends to be quite KPI driven. Again, at Manhattan Partners, it's not. My targets are like, they're pretty simple. They're just to be like promoted, basically, which is fantastic. But in a lot of recruitment companies, it's you've got to do X number of calls to clients, X number of candidates, this many send outs, this many people added to the system. And I think there's like 10 different kinds that you're supposed to do, like in a month, 10 or 12. And every day you break those down, and one day you get behind on them and you stress. And then the next day you're even more behind, and you have like monthly reviews. And I literally used to feel sick before my reviews because I thought I'd done an awful job, because they were so unachievable that nobody ever really got them anyway. But I kind of be told that I'm not doing a good enough job for it, despite working like really long hours. So I think that level of
like that kind of goal setting. I'd rather have a common goal that people can achieve. I'm a firm believer in the dopamine hit to-do list. Okay. Yeah. Which is every time you tick, you've accomplished some step or some goal on your to-do list, you get a tiny hit of dopamine. It's basically the gamification of work. It's what you see inside of achievement and things inside of games, those tiny little dopamine hits that we get as gamers as well. I believe in that because you're more encouraged to be
Yeah.
successful if you're seeing success happening, if you're seeing progress. If instead you're working in a deficit and always working in a deficit,
it's not healthy.
it doesn't sound right to me.
It happens.
Sorry,
It's
Volstrat in chat has just said, looks at to-do list, sighs. Looks at to-do list, sighs.
I will tell you this. If you find yourself doing to-do lists and you are sighing at it, you've got the wrong things on your to-do list. In fact, shrink it down even
I
more.
love a list. I love a weekend list. You know, I make one of like all the errands that I've got to do on a weekend on nice little pink thing. Oh, I love it. That really helps because I don't know. Have you heard of the carrot and stick analogy?
I know about carrots. I know about sticks.
You know,
what analogy in particular you're referring to?
Well, it's just basically like a motivational thing that I got taught in training, and it's essentially like people are either motivated by the carrot or motivated by the stick. So the stick is hitting you and you're running because I don't know, it's pretty crude to be honest, but do you know what I mean? So there's people out there who are scared by, let's just imagine it's like a little like rabbit or something and it wants, you know, the carrot, I suppose. And so so the stick is people that are motivated by like failure. You know, they're scared if I don't do this, and you know, really gets them into gear to like working really hard. Not necessarily a negative thing, but there's people who are like more carrot, so that's, you know, you dangle some sort of like reward or achievement in front of them and they go at it. That's what I do. I have carrot, not physical carrots, but like little sticky notes.
I don't know. I like the idea of you going, you know what?
You can only see this side, so you don't know what's going on behind the screen.
I only say that because I actually have carrots from my dinner because I've been eating raw carrots today.
I'll tell you what, our guinea pigs are motivated by carrots. They really are.
There you go.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. You know, for some people, the stress is the stick. For some people, it's the reward. I know, for example, I know some people who actually will procrastinate getting to the end of a project, not in the process or the start, because the idea of it finishing scares them. And to them, that is not a reward. A project being done is uncertainty. Going back to what Chris was saying earlier, you know, that uncertainty is the stress. So for them, the end of a project is horrible. For someone else, the end of a project is a proper milestone. Break out the champagne, let's celebrate. And then for other people, it's just, okay, so it's over. What's next? And it's finding the thing that works best for you and acknowledging that that's what works best for you. Because I think, like I said, society can blanket and say everyone should work this way. Everyone should follow this particular business methodology because the CEO read it in some seminars, so everybody should have a carrot. Well, the carrot's not going to work for everybody. The stick's not going to work for everybody. And heck, cake might not even work for everybody, which just seems like a sacrilegious thing to me.
There's a to-do list chat going on in chat at the moment, and Yusuf has just said, I tend to prioritize when I get to this level of to-do lists that they can't, you know, you can never get to the end of. Sometimes there's just too much to do, so prioritizing and limiting it can help, which is exactly what I do with all of my to-do lists. Unless it's a really simple thing like need to cut the hedge outside, you know, I need to go to the shop and get milk, you know, simple things. If it's work related, I have to prioritize because work's never finished. Ever.
The thing that, ain't that the truth? I think the thing that is also important is you have to forgive yourself. If you get to a day and you can't get your to-do list done, don't immediately turn around and beat yourself for it because that actually adds a level of stress. I used to be the kind that ate that. I loved having that pressure to that extreme. I now know that I need the balance. There's a certain way that I need my stress fed to me in order to be incredibly productive. But when it comes down to it, I had to learn to say to myself, you know what? That's okay. Today, no. That isn't going to work today. Instead, what I'm going to do is this. And instead of sitting and spending my time almost obsessively thinking about how I didn't accomplish the goal or the to-do list I set out for myself, I went, it didn't work today. Why? How can I change that? So I started taking a much more proactive approach to dealing with that, because if I spend all my time wallowing in how much I didn't accomplish, I start doing a spiral for depression.
Yeah.
Instead, if I sit there and I say, I didn't accomplish that today, why? Well, in my case, there might have been a health reason, or there might have been some mitigating factor that I had zero control over, because I have zero control over whether my clients want me to get the work on time or not, or, things like that. Or did I misplan this? Because I'm still learning. Maybe I should have broken this down a bit more. And by taking a proactive approach to it, I see that there's a light at the end of a tunnel, for lack of a better phrase. I really hate that phrase, because I think it derails from the beautifulness of what a tunnel can be.
Got some golden nuggets going on in chat today. I swear, everyone loves it. Loves a bit of mental health.
We do. So, it's such an important topic.
Copperbeard has just said, think of what you managed to do and not what you did not do.
I think that's really, really good point. I think actually having what I started doing have a bit of like consolidation time. So this is one of the things I wanted to say about, but he's preempted it. Sorry, whoever put in that question.
Copperbeardy it was.
Copperbeardy.
Copperbeardy, thank you for that. It's one of the things that I wanted to talk about is what actually prevents burnout. So it's actually understanding that you are a fantastic human being and you've probably got a lot done that day that you actually don't realize. So sometimes taking a few minutes at the end of the day to have a little bit of like consolidation time and think about, I use like a nice little day planner thing, which is split into sections, which I'm not going to show you too much because that's just stuff written on it. Got morning, afternoon, it's confidential.
It's all right.
Little targets I set my
I'm just smiling.
Might be other recruiters looking at this. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Then I've got priority tasks and like admin tasks. So because I write stuff on there like as I go. So first of all, it helps me with my organization. I take things off as I go, and I can look at that at the end of the day and just be like, holy hell, I got all that done in like 8 hours. I'm fantastic. This is great. I feel so much better. And 99% of the time, there's still stuff left over that I then put onto the next day's planner. And that's fine. It's natural. That has helped me so much. And like I said, is that I no longer work to like a KPI thing. I'm not told I have to do. So massive testament to how the directors run this company, because it's not like any other that I've seen before. And this is why I joined, is that they're not telling me that if you've not done 20 calls today, you've failed. Like what have you done? But there's a lot of companies out there that are like that, because they let me. I've now found, this is what has helped my mental health so much, is finding a sense of purpose. You can put so many like tangible things like meditate, yoga, medicate as well, all these sorts of things. But I think the thing that has truly made such a difference is finding a purpose, being able to work in a way that I love and I can make a difference.
I have to piggyback right on that.
Okay.
I live in the philosophy that and this works for me. It might work for someone, but it's not going to work for everyone. I live in the mental state of needing to balance out entertainment and purpose. If I find myself sitting there going, I have no book to read that interests me, no television show that I care to watch, no movie I wish to do, no game I wish to play, I immediately divert my attention to something that has purpose. And purpose can be defined as anything from working on a task on a project to learning a new skill set or anything else, because to me, that has purpose to it. It's not just a frivolous amount of relaxation or, something else like that. It has purpose. And when I find myself mentally like falling behind on the purpose side and I'm slowly going, what? I then move over to something that has a sort of entertainment value to it. And by doing that break, I have discovered that I don't actually work 8-hour days, so to speak. I will section off something like 12 hours of my day. And in between that, I will do a hardcore amount of work on a particular task for like an hour, 2 hours, until I find myself going zib, dib, da. I'll take a break. I might turn to my husband, have a discussion, get up, have a cup of tea, walk the puppies, watch a YouTube video, or I might log into a game and play a dungeon.
Yeah.
By the time I've done that, and this has actually happened to me very, very recently, because I'm on a couple of really big projects right now, I found myself stuck and I could not figure out how to get past a particular problem. And I went, I can't do anymore. I was at that frustration point, not a burnout, but just a high frustration point. And I just put it down. I went, that's it. I need to go kill something. So grabbed a couple friends, went into a dungeon. Midway through the dungeon, whooching, I had the epiphany and I went, so I'm like, great, now the dungeon's done. Got to go back to work, guys. Love ya. And I was right back in it because I had the answer, because I was no longer consciously trying to force me to solve it. It was just percolating in the back of my brain. So having something with purpose, and that being the thing that you focus on, and then balancing it out with something that, for lack of a better term, is just pure entertainment and mindlessness, can actually help stop a lot of the burnout as well. But I also find I'm insanely productive when I do this.
Yeah.
Insanely productive. Something that might take me a 40-hour project, I can actually break down to about 30, 36.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little bit less, probably about 30 to 32 hours in a project, because my focus is so crystal in those moments of purpose.
That's how I structure my day. I mean, I said I've had bouts of burnout, and I've had bouts of depression and feeling less than I currently do at the moment. I feel feeling less about myself rather, which I still can't pin on depression, if you know what I mean. I just don't feel as good and as egotistical, I suppose, as I normally do. It's maybe not the right word, ego.
Chris
I don't know.
Doesn't feel egotistical.
You know what I mean? I don't feel on form.
Every way.
But the way that I structure my work is I created a spreadsheet a few years ago that's just every day I've got a load of columns on it, and I put formulas into it because I'm a programmer. This is what we do. I put formulas into it that allow me to put in a start and an end time and then a task. And I do that, and I just do that granular each day. Because I only got 6 or 7 tasks that I might work on within a day. So there's plenty of room on this spreadsheet. And then it works out how much time for each day that I've worked, and then adds it all together at the end. So I don't work 7.5 hour straight days. I haven't done for a long time, but I'm very, very productive, because exactly what Josey just said, the way that I structure my day is around me and around, right, if I need to have a break, or I need to have a 2-hour lunch today, I'll go and do it. Or if I need to
pillow day, or your guinea pigs need love.
It doesn't happen very often at the moment, especially when I've got lots of work on and I'm quite focused. But if I do need to play a game, I will, and I don't feel guilty about it. And if anyone tries to make me feel guilty about it, I just give them the spreadsheet and say, I didn't charge you. It wasn't part of my day, so leave me alone.
Well, that does come with being your own boss as well. If you work for a pretty corporate company and you're being micromanaged, it's practically impossible to do these things.
There are some people who thrive some micromanagement and some people who don't.
I think as a grad, right? So, as a grad, you're new into the work world, and you don't know what to expect. You don't even really know what your rights are, some things definitely a little bit shady, around some of the sick day stuff. Anyway, that like we said, story for another day. But I think sometimes I always ask myself, why didn't I was so unhappy. Why didn't I leave sooner? And I think it had to take it. I had a lack of confidence, which, I always have. And I think anyone who knows me does know that I'm pretty brave. So I don't, looking back, I don't really know. And I think I was just, like you said, the uncertainty, it's really, really scary. So I guess something that I really want to give advice out to people is 100% know your worth. And if it's that nothing is worth you losing your mind or your mental health over, because trust me, it's so hard to go back. So hard to go back. There are places out there that will take you for, they'll treat you as you are worth. Do you know what I mean? So I think no matter what industry you work in, I think, if you're a recruiter with experience, I think you're probably safe to say that you are in reasonable demand. As a developer, you're in pretty high demand, as Chris probably knows, and Josey as well. But I think no matter what industry you're in, I think there's, honestly, just ask yourself the question, have those conversations with managers, which, I have had in the past that actually didn't really amount to anything. And I think that's part of the reason I decided, it's time to go. But, my time's kind of done here. I think, I've ended up somewhere where I took the plunge. It was absolutely, I changed jobs during lockdown. Like, who does that? Insane, but
A
best
lot of
decision.
people, in fact, at the moment.
They've had
A
to in some
lot of people
cases,
have had to
but
change jobs, but
Yeah.
out of choice, it's different,
Yeah, it
That's
is.
what I mean. Like, who, I did this all out of choice, and it was a really big jump to make. But like, I had the faith, and it's done me like a world of good, because I work with, like, complete autonomy in my day, almost just like you two do. Like, you're your own boss. I still have bosses, but I still work to, the ways that I want, and it works well for me. They say to me, if you want to take an extra half hour, whatever, over lunch to exercise, that really helps my mental health, right? They said, do it. Like, it's absolutely fine. You don't even have to like make up the time. But, in previous jobs, I would have had to have like 2 promotions to get that 3 times a week, And
There's different values, and it comes from we live in a very skewed society where the companies that have been around for a very, very long time can sometimes be really, really hard to change, because
yeah,
they are the tankers of the ocean that if you need them to turn around, they're going to take a long time to move and change. But I
yeah,
want to also point out what Voltskrak has said, and lead on to that with what Yusuf has also pointed out, because Voltskrak has said not feeling guilty for taking some time for yourself is an important skill in itself. And it really is, because when you feel like, one of the most difficult things with imposter syndrome is believing that you're allowed to have time
yeah.
and allowed to put down tools, so to speak.
and
And then
allowed to
Yusuf
fail.
has, yes. Oh my gosh, failures, like, I can't even
Yeah.
get to tell you how many times I fail when trying
Just
to do
watch one of
something
my
with my
dev streams and you'll see
prototypes.
how much of a failure I am. Even though I come across like a
Actually,
confident person, I'm failing all the time, but I'm learning from those failures as well.
the best thing you can ever see, there is actually a clip of this that someone has done from our show, where Chris makes a comment and all of a sudden he starts shrinking further and further and further down. He basically threw a temper tantrum, like a little toddler. It was so adorable and so perfect. But the thing is, it made sense from where he was at. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. But I'm like, well, this is how it goes. Point is, though, Yusuf has also added, I left my first ever dev job on an industrial placement because my mental health shattered. I was completely taken advantage of and suffered as a result. Yeah, I
Oh,
think that is, unfortunately, the lesson most of us have to go through. It's almost not like someone is going to teach you to prevent that. It's almost like you have to experience it to be one in the field, because unfortunately, there are companies, and I know of one right off the top of my head, and I'm not going to name names, but because of the way that they work, there are people who care about their jobs and the people they work with and the company, and they give and they give and they give. And it's become de facto now that they give anywhere between 80 to 90 hours a week of their time to the company. And if they ever don't, all of a sudden they're not doing their job. Don't let it become an industry standard.
They're not a team player anymore.
Exactly.
oh yeah.
And there are companies that will suck you dry. Don't let them.
I was actually speaking to I won't go into why, but I was speaking to Parul's one of Parul's colleagues. I think your boss potentially today. I don't like to use the term boss. I don't like that word, but you know what I mean. She runs the company. She's a partner in the company. So, and I was saying exactly that. It's difficult to. I kind of got lost then. Brain just whatever my point was has just gone.
Well, we're almost at the BYOM.
We
So
are.
do you have anything you want to say before we head into the BYOM?
Or we can do it and come back if it comes back to you.
Yeah.
What, me? No, no, my brain just went, nope, sorry,
I call
can't
it like
remember.
It's like a brain fart where it comes and it goes.
Absolutely can't. I've got
Absolutely.
no idea what I was going to mention your boss for, but it was something to do with what you said. But anyway.
But what we're going to do is we're going to actually get to this point where we're going to have you back. We
Yes.
are at sort of a stopping point, because otherwise we can go on forever and ever and ever. And instead, what I'm going to say is we've reached that point where we now do what we call the BYOM. This is our sort of return or our counter to the RTFM, where you are literally told, go out and learn on your own by reading the manual. This time, we're going to bring you the manual and the things that we have learned regardless of what it may have been this week. Is there anything that you learned this week, Chris, that you feel like sharing with the class?
I didn't prepare this week at all. Usually I have a little post-it
He's
or
not
a
gonna
series.
do work. Abort.
Look, hello. I've done everything for the podcast this week. I've been very, very prudent in the pre-work. I just forgot about the BYOM.
Yes, you have. I have been so busy, and you've totally stepped on that. So many things.
I'll let you guys, and I'll try and think of one while you answer.
For me, I decided to finally take the plunge and go into Docker for development.
No.
Yeah. So I do a lot of WordPress development because a lot of my clients work in WordPress. And so my job is to do a lot of things for them, be it theme or plugin or any kind of other development that goes with it. And I had many years ago a really horrible situation with Docker where it basically bricked my system. Yeah. So I have always been very, very hesitant. I understand it. I get its purpose. I get its point. But I decided to give it another shot and see what I could do with it. And not only have I started pretty much migrating everything that I need to into Docker containers for development, but I'm also quite pleased that several of the tools that I actually use for development are capable of doing a lot of the work for me in a Docker container. So I want to give a little heads up to people who might be in the WordPress community or people who might work in Docker and be like, but I can't get me files up because Docker is all like anti SFTP and stuff. It can be a pain with things like that. And if you want to make it really simple, just use DP Migrate Pro from Delicious Brains. In fact, just worship the ground Delicious Brains walk on. I love them so much. They're a bit like my love of Git Kraken.
I just tried to set up when I was looking at headless WordPress, I tried to set up a Docker container myself for a completely Dockerized WordPress deployment. And I ran into a problem, and I can't remember what it was now, but it was a killer, and I couldn't get past it. There was a particular thing that stopped me doing it related to WordPress specifically. It could have been that I couldn't map volumes properly, which is something to do with files and uploads. That might have been it, actually, uploading files and applying plugins and things like that.
The uploads and the things like that. Yeah, there's a big thing with that because WordPress uses, sort of FTPS, FTP sort of connections, and you can do volumes. And if you want to have a plugin, etc., you can map a volume very easily to like your local PC and just extract everything. But that's just extra pain in the butt work. Instead, the way that I have actually ended up working it is my local PC ends up becoming staging, which allows me to do that in between process between production and dev. And I have a very specific site that is dev oriented, which allows me to do all the stuff that I need to do. And then I pull it into the Docker and using certain tools. And let's just say that it works beautifully.
Look into multi-stage Docker containers, because that might solve the problem as well. You can actually have multiple different stages that are instance at different points in time. We'll go into that technical detail.
We'll go into all that stuff later. But I will tell you, the thing that made me fall in love with Docker was simply the fact that I'm a Vi girl. I always will be. I don't think that's ever going to change, no matter how much people want me to be like Vim or Emacs.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you later. See you next week. Bye-bye.
But the thing is, it's one of those things I learned on Vi. But, I love the fact that I can actually have that pre-included in the actual container through the YAML. And like, I'm a happy girl. I'm happy.
Just so everyone knows, my mind was just blown because I'm not a dev. So.
Well, we're getting a bit geeky here. Your BYOM doesn't have to be technical.
Smile away. No, because, I'm a beginner coder. So obviously working in tech recruitment piqued my interest in that. So I will look into that a little bit more. So thank you for that, Josey. I don't know, maybe it might end up a back-end dev one day. But I think not a biggest learn, like just of this week is just like a massive realization of that. I think one thing that companies can do to look after their mental health of their employees is not just do days and puppies in the office, even though that is a great idea, by the way. Julie and John, if you're listening, is allowing they are listening, I know they are.
Hi.
So it genuinely for me has been flexible and remote working and allowing it. So that's not saying that we are getting rid of an office and we're never going to have that. I miss the human interaction. But for me, I've not slept with an alarm on for 4 months.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I had an alarm.
I don't well, because you work for yourself, Chris. I don't sleep with an alarm on, right? My body naturally wakes me when it's ready. And oh my gosh, like I've gone down from, I used to have 5 cups of coffee a day. I now have 2 a week, 2 or 3 a week. I was an addict. Yeah, that's steep of a decline. And do you know why? Because I can wake up when I want. I wake up anytime between 6:30 to 8 o'clock and I start my day when I want. I eat my lunch when I'm hungry, and not having like people around me all the time is it's fantastic. So companies should make this, everyone should make it a thing moving forwards and not just for COVID.
In the remote working community, there's something called, or there's a movement that is encouraged in all companies that we try and work with, is called remote first. If a company can think about their remote workers first and not just dismiss them because they're not in front of them, and not just because not automatically think that they're not doing work because they're remote, that would make the world a much nicer place, or the world of work.
I agree. Yeah.
So remote first, and don't just allow remote working, encourage remote working.
Please, if you're going to do this and you're having people in a secure way work off a VPN, please make certain that you have enough licenses for everybody. Please don't be that company that sends home 30 people and only has 4 licenses. Okay. All right.
So my BYM,
speaking from experience.
I have a BYM. I just remembered I've been doing a lot of work with Node.js over the last few weeks. I've been putting this bot together. I have never worked with pure JavaScript, which is what Node.js is kind of a hybrid of pure kind of old school JavaScript and some newer concepts in ESM 2020, which is like the most modern version of JavaScript. It's kind of a mismatch. It's kind of hashed together, and some bits work and some bits don't. But I've never written, me in my test-driven development. I absolutely love test-driven development. I do it for everything. I've really got into it, and I really got into a framework called Jasmine, which is used in Angular. It comes kind of out as part of the Angular ecosystem. But anyway, I started using Jasmine in pure JS, and I learned a lot about Jasmine. The main thing that I learned is jasmine.createSpy. Now, it's just a method, but it allows you to create a method, an object, because I'm going to have to give you some context here, and it's going to get deep, I'm sorry. But in JavaScript, we don't create objects. We create prototypes. And prototypes they look like objects, but one object can be equal to a different object if it's got the same properties on it. I don't know, that'll make sense to some people listening, but others it may not. So basically, when you create an object with jasmine.createSpy, you can create an object that looks like another object without actually instantiating it, and you can spy on and therefore mock up particular properties very, very quickly and easily with a one-liner. And it's just really nice, and I learned about that over the last few weeks, and I'm using it quite extensively now. So it's great. Jasmine's a good little framework anyway to get into, because it's used quite a lot of places, but it's great for mocking and test-driven development and that kind of thing. So anyway, that was my BYM.
How long have you been using Jasmine?
Well, I've been using it for when was I over in Leeds? I did some work with Jasmine over in Leeds 6 years ago. So I've been using it for about 6 years, but not in anger, or certainly not with pure JavaScript. It was with TypeScript previously. So
I find it interesting. I mean, the first introduction I really had into test-driven stuff was Cucumber and Gherkin. So yeah, I love the names that we have in our world.
Testing, mocha, chai.
However, I'll tell you something. As a recruiter, the thing I have to say is, if someone gives you a huge list and says, which one of these are Pokemon, I hope you know. Because we have so many different languages. But we are at the end of our show. And otherwise, again, we will continue going and going and going. massive thank you to all of you in Twitch chat who have been incredibly vocal. I will tell you, some of the best alarms that you can have are dogs. I have 2, Sigma and Belle, and Sigma will guarantee get us both, my husband and I, up at exactly the wrong time, which is like 2 minutes before the alarm goes off for my husband, because he needs the alarm. Me, I get to do the thing that Chris does. But yes, I agree with you guys. Puppies are great. So thank you to you in Twitch chat for your amazing contributions. Thank you to everyone listening in the future in the podcast. And thank you, Parul. You are amazing. And you need to come back.
I will. I would absolutely love to come back. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I've really enjoyed it. Much to think about. Lots of food for thought.
Do you want to pimp anything for yourself? Your company that you're so proud of, yourself even as a recruiter?
Or any little projects, if you're working on any coding projects that are open source, you can do that.
I will bring you some more deets on my projects on the next one. I think I'm very early in my JavaScript, but if anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I am linkedin.com/the coding recruiter 1. Someone had the original. Do you know how annoyed I was that somebody had /the coding recruiter? And I was like, no, you're not.
When was the last time you looked at JavaScript?
So I had to take the 1. So I am the coding recruiter 1 on LinkedIn. Please connect with me. I'm always up for a chat. Coding stuff, mental health stuff. I'm genuinely always here to help. Doesn't matter if it's on a weekend. Never switch off, which is bad. But
yeah, that is bad.
It is very bad. You still have to take time for yourself.
As in, like, I'm on like LinkedIn messages, you know, it's just another form of like.
You know what it is? You're like me. It's the social interaction. You like people. You like to just talk to people.
Friends, you know, I like making friends. But I'm on there, so everyone, please come and be my friend on LinkedIn. I would really love that. And you can follow my company that I work for. My company, I said that like I own it. Manhattan Partners. We are a fantastic bunch. We do some great things together. We also do, you know, other like little like podcasts and webinars, and you'll see some events that I've shared. We're doing one on diversity and inclusion. So that's a panel event on the 13th of August. So if you could put the link for that as well when you put this podcast out, we would absolutely love if some more of you could join, because it's a key topic in the tech community at the moment. So that's all the pin page from me. Thanks for letting me do a bit of shameless promo.
It's fine. It's not shameless when we ask you to do it.
Yay!
Well, I mean, I don't know. We're kind of shameless with our self-promotion.
Just going to say, we're just about to be just as shameless ourselves, so don't you worry about it. So yes, you can visit our website on www.dnistream.live, where you can get links to all our social media channels, all of our podcasts, platforms. There's millions of them now. I've lost track of how many places we've got the podcasts on. And you can also use it to contact us for any reason whatsoever. If you've got a comment, if you've got a question, if you want to be a guest on the show, or you've got any kind of suggestions for topics, we're always open to communication. You can get hold of us on Twitter for that as well. Or just drop us a message in Twitch. I'm always on. Maybe, sometimes. Most of the time, I'm always on. And don't forget to follow our Twitch channel as well. If you're new, if you're watching for the first time, we do this every Thursday, so get following right now or else.
Yep, and lastly, the audio version of our podcast and the video version of our podcast will actually be published to other channels that you'll be able to access at 7 a.m. British time on Mondays. We have made this decision. We hope it'll allow us to have a bit of a weekend and still get everything out to everybody in time. Now, we hope to see you all next week, Thursday, 7 p.m. live here on twitch.tv/DNI stream. All that's left is to say goodbye. So goodbye to Chris.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Parul.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Goodbye to all of you amazing people in Twitch land and in the future podcasts and YouTube lands. Bye-bye.
Bye.